Meeting to order for the Board of Commissioners for Deschutes County. Would you please join us in our Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any citizen input this morning? If anyone in the room cares to make a comment regarding something that isn't on our agenda today, okay. Seeing that there is none, we will proceed to our consent agenda.
So I'd move approval of the consent agenda.
And I will second that. Any further discussion? Commissioner Henderson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. Okay. The first item on our agenda is from Cody Smith. Oh, I did want to make one comment. If you didn't hear the news, it's a excellent idea to actually get your flu shot if you haven't gotten it. It doesn't always work, but we did lose 80,000 Americans in 2017. This year, the flu seems to be incredibly impactful on young children, and we have had 20,000 people in America have died from this year's flu. So please wash your hands, use warm water, and get your shot. That's my note. That's my public service announcement.
Okay, thank you. Cody Smith, Road Department. The Road Department had prepared solicitation documents for the paving of Alfalfa Market Road from Powell Butte Highway to milepost 4. The project includes paving the first 4 miles of Alfalfa Market Road, so this extends about 2 miles east of Bennett Road and Stenkamp Road out into BLM land. The department received 4 bids for the project. We opened bids on February 14th. Before you this morning is a notice of intent to award the contract to the low bidder, who is the Knife River Corporation Northwest, with a total bid of $935,289. Approval of the notice of intent to award letter will start a 1-week protest period. If no protests are received in that period, the contract would be awarded administratively. We don't have a schedule yet from this contractor. We anticipate the work will take approximately 3 weeks, and per the contract, the work must be completed by September 30th of this year.
Couple questions. Is this about what we would figure for this kind of work? I mean, it looks like, so about $250,000 per mile. This is a 4-mile stretch?
For a paving project like this, yeah.
Bouldering.
So our estimate was just over $1 million for this project. We were actually kind of surprised with the prices we got here. The price per ton for asphalt mix seems to be going down this year. So the prices we got were lower.
Prices are lower.
So that's at least the trend that appears to be happening right now. So we were using, for our estimate, we were using bid prices we saw last year that were closer to $69, $70 a ton, and prices we got with this one were closer to $60 a ton. So
so when you stop at milepost 4, what is that? Just that section's worse than the following section?
That first 4 per our pavement management system. So again, just a quick overview. We every year go out and rate sample units on all our roads. When we do that, we're looking at we're measuring the severity and quantity of different types of distress on those sample units. We enter all that into a pavement management software program we have that then assigns each of those segments of road a PCI, and we, using the decision tree we've set up in that program, prioritize our pavement preservation projects. Yes, this section, the first 4-mile section of Alfalfa Market Road's towards the top. The remainder of Alfalfa Market Road is right now we're showing it in our 5-year plan as paving that section a couple years out. That piece will probably be coupled with some minor improvement work that we need to do at some intersections in that segment. So, but yeah, this first 4-mile section, certainly the pavement condition is in much worse, is experiencing much worse distress than the next section is.
Thanks.
So you did say it would be done by the end of September?
Yeah, contract completion date is September 30th.
Okay. And it is amazing that all 4 bids were less than our estimate.
Yeah, like I said, I think this is kind of the first big paving project for Central Oregon that's been advertised this year. So we're kind of first in the hopper here. And so, yeah, we were kind of surprised by how low the price of asphalt mix has gone down here this year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I'll move approval of board chair signature of document number 2020-083.
And I will second that motion. Any further discussion? Commissioner Henderson?
Vote yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Cody.
All right, and next item's mine also. I'll just
Yes.
jump right into that. The road department also has prepared solicitation documents for the slurry seal bend maintenance zone project. This project includes applying a single layer of slurry seal mixture, which slurry seal is essentially a mixture of asphalt emulsion, latex polymer, sand, and finer aggregate. The project includes 9.88 miles of local roads located in our Bend maintenance zone. These are all primarily residential streets and subdivisions located east of the city of Bend. This will be the first slurry seal project that we, the county, has done. Slurry seals aren't anything new. City of Bend, City of Redmond's been doing them now for the last few years. I've had experience with them over in Western Oregon for several years. Just another good tool to add to our pavement preservation toolbox. Our intent with these is to kind of help supplant and augment some aspects of our chip seal program, utilizing these slurry seals on streets that are a little more difficult to chip seal, especially cul-de-sacs where with our chip seal, we've got trucks and things we've got to get turned around in there, and we're not quite as productive in those kind of dead-end streets as we could be with a slurry seal. So we advertised this for bids. 4 bids were received. We opened bids on February 19th. Before you this morning is the notice of intent to award the contract to the low bidder, Pave Northwest, with a total bid of $283,473. Again, approval of the notice of intent to award will start a 1-week protest period, and if no protests are received in that period, the contract will be awarded administratively. We anticipate this work will take approximately 2 weeks. Per our contract, the work can start no sooner than June 8th and has to be completed by August 31st. So the contractor has a 3-month window to get about 2 weeks worth of work done there.
Great.
Couple questions. So is slurry seal, it's something more of a liquid then versus the chip seal?
Slurry seal, yeah, so slurry seals, it's a mixture of asphalt emulsion, which is basically asphalt oil mixed with water and an emulsifier. So instead of heating it up real hot and letting it cool down, the way it breaks is by the water evaporating out of it. Mixture of that, latex polymers to add some tensile strength to it, and then a mixture of sand and very fine aggregate.
So do you spread it differently?
Yeah, so this is just a single mixture that comes out of the back of a distributor truck with a power box on the back that basically applies it directly to the road, and then this truck has a big squeegee on the back of it, and it'll just drag it along to uniformly distribute it across the surface of the road, and then a crew of guys with hand squeegees behind that comes up to do any cleanup work.
And then I noticed, now all the companies that bid on this, it must be a specialty industry, because I haven't heard, none of those are names that.
Yeah, so there's maybe 5 or 6 contractors total on the West Coast that do this, and they bounce all up and down the West Coast doing this work. So the contractor who was our low bidder here is actually the only contractor in Oregon that at least we're aware of who does this kind of work. This contractor's home office is located over in Eugene. But yeah, it's fairly specialty work, but these contractors that do it for several different road agencies up and down the West Coast. They pretty much just spend all summer with their crews bouncing up and down the I-5 corridor mostly, doing this kind of work.
Is this an experiment for us to see how we like it, or?
I wouldn't call it an experiment. I mean, we've got, other agencies in Central Oregon have kind of done the experiment for us. Like I said before, I've had quite a bit of experience with it over in Western Oregon. We kind of let the cities of Bend and Redmond experiment with it here in Central Oregon with our colder climate and how it's going to perform with studded tires going on it during the winter. Seems to be performing very well. So it's certainly a first for Deschutes County, but I wouldn't necessarily call it experiment. It's a pretty tested pavement preservation method.
So how long is it supposed to last?
Typically, we're looking to hopefully get at least 3 to 5 years of life out of a slurry seal. And really the intent of this is it restores the friction course on the surface of the road, seals at least the micro cracks. The bigger cracks, our crew will come in beforehand and seal with our crack seal machine. But at a minimum, we'd want to see 3 to 5 years of life out of this. Generally, with our lower volume roads, we'll probably see a longer life out of it, though.
Okay, because it's like almost 30,000 a mile. So I just wondered how long that was. And the fact that you said didn't you say at one time it had sand in it or something?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that just gives it a little more character.
The sand is basically it's an aggregate filler in the mixture. What's really providing the friction course for the road itself is the finer aggregate that's in it also.
Okay, do you know how many people drive around with studs now? Do you have any idea, Cody?
Off the top of my head, no, I don't know a percentage of Central Oregon drivers or Oregon drivers in general who are using studded tires.
Okay, I was just wondering because it seemed like that would be impactful on it.
Yeah, it is, and certainly, this isn't a method we'd run out and put down on one of our arterial our collector roads right now. We're doing pretty good with those with our chip seal and our other more traditional paving projects. So this is really our only intent here is to address the lower volume, lower speed local roads.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a request. So I noticed today, this road is really in bad shape in front of us. So is that on their maintenance schedule? The city out there? And then I don't know if this is considered parking lot, but right in front of us, but the road right up here.
Yeah, this would be a city street. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure if this is if they've got any plans for this project. City of Bend actually has their slurry seal project. I think they're opening bids this week, and they also have their overlay projects for the year out.
I was just kind of wondering if we have any, I know we do work for them. Do we have any ability to ask them to improve the roads around our?
We can certainly make the request as far as us in any way managing or dictating their pavement management program.
We can make a request.
We don't have that role. As far as this right here, I believe this is county property, just part of the parking lot. That'd be something to talk to Lee about.
Both this and the road going up there, and maybe I don't know, just.
Yeah, these are all city streets. We can certainly let their streets division know that
We
that
would
request came from
appreciate
one of our commission, or from our commission rather.
Great, thank you.
All right.
So I'll move approval of board signature of document 2020-085.
And I'll second that motion. Any further discussion? Commissioner Henderson?
I vote yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Mr. Shimke.
Good morning. Tim Shimke, Director of the Department of Solid Waste. As pointed out in the Solid Waste Management Plan, the transfer station in Redmond is beyond capacity, and they recommended that we improve that as soon as possible. So this is the start of that process. In January, we solicited for engineering services, both design, development of contract documents, and construction oversight services. We received 3 responses to that request for proposals. Civil and Environmental Consultants, CEC Incorporated, was determined to be the best proposer. CEC is located, has an office located in Vancouver, Washington. They are a big player in the Midwest, have done just a ton of transfer stations. J.R. Miller scored very well as well. They're kind of tied in raw scores, although CEC got more first place votes. So we look at scoring both from a raw scores as well as how individual members of the selection team ranked them. So like in this case where basically it was a tie as far as raw scores, CEC got more first place nods than J.R. Miller. It kind of comes down to a judgment call on my part. I chose CEC, kind of a spread the work around. CEC also, every subcontractor, the majority of the work will happen with Bend firms. So they made it a point of making sure that everybody else on the project besides themselves was local. And that scored favorably in my mind as well.
Great.
This typical notice of intent to award, start a protest period. If there's no protest in the period, then the contract is awarded without further action of the board. You see on my score sheet, they were in the middle as far as cost goes. PBS Environmental, we use them quite a bit. They're a good firm. They do mainly environmental monitoring services for us and geotechnical work. They have a very good price here, but they have not really constructed transfer stations. So they were kind of lacking in the experience side.
So I was going to ask about that, when you rated the cost part of it, and even if it was more broad, it seems like there's such a big difference between them and the J.R. Miller. I mean, it's almost $234,000 difference. It's like 30% more. 35 to go to J.R. Miller. It's almost 90,000 to go to. It seems like it's not just as a pricing thing. You only gave them 5 points better, or 10 points better than. I mean, it seemed like it was more extreme than that, for whatever it's worth. I'm not questioning the decision, but I was surprised that they'd only got a 5 point difference for $90,000, because that's a big. And so.
Yeah, I kind of went, in 5 point increments. Other
Yeah.
people, broke it down even more finer scoring.
Yeah.
And again, I think although that's a very attractive price from PBS, they just don't have the experience, and it's quite possible that fee would grow as we went through the project with an inexperienced engineer, I guess.
The other question I had from the notes and things, so the only non-county employee that looked at it was from Republic Services. I thought it was interesting how high she rated J.R. Miller over the others, and she was inconsistent. The rest of you all kind of were similar, and you're really close in the way you looked at it. Any thoughts on why that was, or what?
She was a woman, probably. Women like to score.
I'm not going there.
I know you're not. Well, we're getting equal pay, though. Remember that. There's a new law.
Well, but seriously,
Well-
I don't know that it has anything to do with gender. I was curious. I was thinking it might have difference, had something to do with experience with who they've hired before or what they're looking for. It seemed like she just had a different scoring sense almost. And I was just curious if you vetted that when you were.
I didn't really.
I was just kind of curious
Yeah.
why she came up so different.
Well, she was.
I hope
she obviously-
I hope it wasn't just based on gender, that there was another reason.
Well, she definitely gave them first place, and she is the only person that did. But I appreciate seeing different evaluations. So, and especially someone from outside.
So what is the scope of this? So it's engineering the project and then managing it, but it isn't actually doing it, right? That'll be a different contract or multiple contracts, but they're going to be in charge of the project.
They design it.
Yeah.
They develop the contract documents for us.
Yeah.
We bid, and then they'll help us evaluate those bids. And then as construction proceeds, they're the firm that receives the various submittals that have to come to us. They go through that professional, answering questions about the specifications,
So I'm interested, and perhaps other commissioners will, once you get a design, it'll be interesting to see what is going on, because we get asked about this in public events, like, what are you doing in Negus? And it'd be nice if we can talk,
Yeah.
be reasonably
yeah. I
informed.
think
So-
it would also be a good idea to engage the city of Redmond, when we get to that point, so they know we're planning out there.
Yeah. Sounds
We'll do that.
So, Mr. Shimke, you actually, your ranking was tied for those two, but the fact that CEC was going to use local, you felt that that was,
Well, that was one of the factors in my mind.
I mean,
When
after-
it gets that close and there's kind of a tie there, then, you kind of have to make a judgment call, and so the fact that J.R. Miller just finished a $500,000 job for us on the management plan, my thinking was, let's spread the work around. That was one factor,
right?
as well as a number of other factors. So all those locals, that was good. CEC was impressive.
And you said they do the Midwest, so you're talking like Kansas?
I think they're like Ohio is their main base, so they have all kinds of transfer stations through that Midwest corridor, and they're trying to get established out here on the west side. And so, I tied them with Miller, and very much, they're both very well qualified firms. So you kind of drop back to other factors,
Great.
Okay. Well, I'd move approval of chair signature of document number 2020-174, notice of intent to award contract for Negus Recycling Transfer Facility Design and Construction Management Services.
And also,
So I want to point out that this is gonna cross the budget line, so their schedule is not going to have them finished until September with their design work. So we have adequate funds in this budget. We'll reallocate funds in the next budget to make sure the project gets done. I also want to point out that we intend to construct in the 21-22 fiscal year, not this coming budget. Well, actually, I am going to have the construction in this coming budget.
right.
And we are, at this point, moving towards borrowing the $6 million to do that. I'll have, in the budget process, I'll have some scenarios in my spreadsheet that show if we borrow for this, how might we look at cashing out further capital needs. So I don't want to say that we're committing to borrowing the full 26 million like I had originally laid out in my spreadsheet. We're intending to borrow for this project, this $6 million project, and then the next big chunk will come with Southwest in 3 or 4 years, and we'll look and see if that makes sense to pay for that one as opposed to borrowing money for that one. I think all those large expenditures in the future will scrutinize that. Should we borrow? Should we use reserves? Should we adjust rates in order to use reserves?
So you already have kind of a price tag, but we haven't designed it?
That's right. That's right. That could change based on the final design that they come to. So when we did the management plan, we had J.R. Miller give us just a conceptual layout, the size of the building, roads, et cetera, mainly to get that budgetary number from them, and that was their estimate. So who knows what the actual cost will be once we get a final design.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we need to vote? Any
So
further
I
discussion?
made the motion, yeah. Did you second it?
Yes, I did, and then, but I seconded.
All right.
In between, yes.
Okay.
So, further discussion? Commissioner Henderson?
I vote yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tim.
Does the screen come on automatically? Oh, there it goes. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Greg, for your treasurer and finance report.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. Greg Munn, Acting Treasurer, CFO for the county. And we'll let this warm up, hopefully it'll work. And I just have a few slides I want to show you later, and we have a very brief presentation at the end of this that I'd like to share with you as well. Until then, I'm on page 31 of the packet, and I'll walk you through the Treasurer's report. If you look down there at the first box, you'll see that our balance at the end of January was $233,869,000. And that amount is about $7 million less than last month. And just to give you some context on that, the average decline in the average use of our portfolio balances declines about $6.5 million a month during non-tax collection months. So we're right about where we have seen the averages over the last several years. Still down that box, if you look at the percentages on the right, you can see that our municipal debt is about 6.6% of the portfolio. Our corporate notes are 24%. We're within, I just want to give you a context of all that, we're within our maximum amounts with the exception of the LGIP, which I'll mention in a minute. But in terms of investment returns, typically our best returns are on corporate notes. And so generally it's targeting those to try to maximize the capacity within the policy of investments in our corporate notes first. So those are where we get our best returns outside of the LGIP. The LGIP, if you slide down there, it's the second to last number in the middle column, $50,683,000. Our cap on that is $50,400,000. Thank you. I'm running it through here. Okay. Which is slightly above the $50,400,000 cap, but we have some leeway there with the state in terms of managing those amounts, so we try to keep that right underneath that cap. If you slide to the box to the right there, investment income, you'll notice that our investment earnings, $412,000 for the month of January. We then take a small piece off of that, 5% piece, to fund the operations of the Treasury, and we're left with $392,000 that ends up getting dispersed on a pro rata basis across all of the county funds that have dollars invested in the pool. So it's shared amongst the county. And you'll see that that is about $25,000 less than January of last year, that number down below. Okay, I might have to improvise.
What, do you have one of these? I can.
You try that?
Yeah.
Okay. If you slide down to the box, it says yield percentages. Our average return is 2.26%. That's down slightly from 2.3% last month. And again, we've talked about this over and over again, but that's just the trends of the yields and returns that we're receiving on our investment portfolio. And primarily now we're being hit pretty hard by this coronavirus scare. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And our weighted average maturity value, the center box in the middle there at the bottom, is also declining. It was 0.92 years. It's down to 0.85 years. So maturities are shortening as the long-term yields and returns are not worth the risk of investing for that long. All right, I'll flip the page, and a couple of graphics there. The top graphic, the 24-month historic investment returns. I added, not to get too busy, but I added a line there, the orange line, and that's, I thought one of the pieces of information that might be useful is to see what's happened with the LGIP rates over time. So at the top of that graph, you see the green, that's the corporate bonds. Those again are the highest returns typically we see in our portfolio. And the bottom being the red, those are the treasury return on treasury notes, treasury bonds. And those are typically the lowest, although the least risky. And then in between is generally the LGIP and then our overall average county rate, which is in the blue. 10-year portfolio balance, continuing with the same pattern as in the past. Flipping the page to page 33. Here's a snapshot at the end of January of all of our investments. And again, as I've mentioned in the past, there's a pretty significant difference between the yield to maturities on instruments that were bought last January compared to those that were purchased this January. A good example is the top two. You see Apple in gray, which was purchased a year ago. These aren't apples to apples, no pun intended, but Apple is a corporate, treasuries are not. They're the lowest return typically, but you can see about the fourth column from the right-hand side, a difference of about 2.4% and 1.6%. All right. Any questions on that so far?
You're comparing apples to the U.S. Treasury then, the 1.6?
Yes, and that's
Okay.
not really a fair comparison.
No, that is not a fair comparison.
But you could do it to Wells Fargo down below, which is a blue line, and it's 1.9, right?
Yes, that would be closer.
So Toyota 19 was 2.7.
Mhm.
So what are you highlighting in blue? You're doing, oh, I see, purchases made, yeah, I see what you're saying.
January.
Those are comparison ones.
Just to give you some context on what the market is that we're
Yeah.
buying into
Yeah.
compared to last year. All right.
I think I've got it coming up.
Okay. Not only accountant, but you can jump into it.
I'm here for your Community
Technology.
Development Department and ITT needs.
Yeah.
I'm so glad he's here.
I think we have it.
Okay, one piece that I'd like to share with you, I'm going to pass these graphs down.
Come on. Oop, okay, that's yours.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep. Oh, great. Okay. Okay, so what you're looking at here is on the horizontal axis is time. These are the, I guess I should back up and say these are the average U.S. agency, the curve yield on U.S. Agency funds. So for example, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, those sorts of types of investments. The vertical lines represent years, so if you're looking from the left to the right, there are 10 of those. Those are 10 years. So the return on if you slide out those first 10 vertical lines, that would be the return on those on a 10-year average U.S. agency, all the way out to 30 years, all the way out to the right. So the point I want to make here is that, or let me explain the lines real quickly. So the dashed line at the very top, those are the returns that we received on U.S. agencies 1 month ago. The next line down is the return projection, or the returns from 1 week ago, and then the line below that is now. So you can see what's happened with the returns on U.S. agencies over the last month, and this is highly due to the coronavirus, especially when you look in the short term. You can see the current rates have dipped really low in the 3, 4, and 5 year range, and that is where our investment policy lies. We are 0 to 5 years, so we're really feeling this now when it's time to actually reinvest some of our dollars in the market. Just want to share that with you. The next thing is, you've probably seen a copy of this was put in your box, the Popular Annual Financial Report. So this is the first time we've done this. And the reason for this is to take our CAFR, our Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, which is fairly lengthy and steeped with all sorts of information about the county's financial situation. But this really applies to a very, very small slice of people that find all of this information important. So what we wanted to do was glean off of the CAFR what we thought was most important to share with the other 99% of people. And so that's what we have here is our Popular Annual Financial Report. This was the product of work from James Wood in our office, Cam Sparks, and then of course Whitney put the nice finish on it for us. So we just submitted this
You
to.
didn't do the numbers?
I don't know.
I know, I saw her credit. And I
If
was-
there, if there's a difference in one of them, we could probably say that she did.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
No, so they did a really great job. We've submitted this to GFOA, and we'll let you know how we do on it. So
So
there's,
they've had this available since 1991, according to the note, that they, the awards for this type of financial document.
yes,
So this is the first time we've
First
done
time
it
we've
on
done
this
it.
level. Okay.
yep. So we're excited to see how that rolls out. Business intelligence tools. So we have shared with you the concept of dashboarding, taking our financial numbers and dashboarding those a couple of times ago. And then most recently, we shared the ability to drill down into those dashboards, click on those graphics, and actually share, get into more information what's on those graphics. And later, as soon as I'm done here, the last piece I want to share with you how these are useful is how departments are actually using these to change and improve processes. So we'll do a real quick sharing with you of that.
So I didn't know we were moving to a different section. So I just wanted to say, I really liked the popular annual financial report. I thought it was really nice. I had some thought on one section, but I don't have it in front of me, so I can't remember. But anyway, just in general, I thought it's a great handout. I don't know how many people look at it, but great job by I know James, when he was in health, he always had colorful, exciting drawings too, so he's a good person to do this stuff, so I really liked it, so.
Great. Well, we'll continue to work on that and improve it as we move forward. Okay, we'll move on to PERS. So I want to circle back and give you an update on PERS, but before I do that, I want to direct your attention to the graphic up here. So several months ago, I presented what our future PERS costs look like. And you can see there that this is overall cost, which includes both a projection on our costs that we pay to the state based on the rates and payroll, and then that little thin line, the little thin portion of the bar graph there, which is our debt service. So obviously we get out to 27, 29, 29, 31, and costs are going to increase quite a bit. Since then, we've had conversations about Senate Bill 1049, which included a variety of reforms that were put in place to help us address some of these cost increases, and also the potential for the investment into a new site account that's matched by the state's investment incentive and fund. So this is where we started. Oops, there we go. Wrong one.
And remind me again when we must have that funded with the 25% match?
May 8th.
May 8th, okay.
So what you're looking at up on the screen now, these are the rates from PERS that, when applied against our payroll, resulted in the graphic I just showed you. So this was the original swing in projected payroll rates that we would have to pay. So this is the basis for where we started a few months ago.
But the big caveats being with certain assumptions about the stock market and return on that, and certain assumptions about how many employees we have. I mean, it's all,
There's a
it's
whole
just a
actuarial.
picture.
Yep. There's a whole
it's-
actuarial assumption that goes behind all of this.
Yeah, it comes up to about, between $400 and $500 million of need over 10 years.
So after we looked at that original graphic, I shared with you a potential solution that would allow us to flatten those rates out. And this line here is a representation, this gray line is a representation of smoothing rates and finding a way to minimize the impact on departments over the long term. So since then, this orange line here takes where our original projection was and says, what would be the revised rates with those Senate Bill 1049 changes? And primarily what this does, and you can see it out in the out here in the end is where the rates were originally going to drop off. One of the primary changes to Senate Bill 1049 was to re-amortize the UAL, that big liability, and push it out. So that's why the rates would continue to stay up here versus dropping here under the original. So it pushes that liability out, which means we're paying for it longer than we would have before.
Which does specifically is not really that good a deal, but lots of counties and school districts and things needed to extend their mortgage, so to speak.
Yeah, and the issue is really dealing with this up here, with this spike. So the blue line here takes the Senate Bill 1049 changes, primarily that reamortization or deferral of the UAL, and then includes the investment of the $13 million into the side account plus the 25% match. So those dollars right there drive this rate down to the blue line. And the concept of smoothing that we discussed a couple of presentations ago, those, if you take the blue line here, which includes the new side account, and we smooth those rates, which means we charge a little bit more in some years and a little bit less in other years, with the purpose of flattening these costs out, flattening the rates out, so that we minimize the year-to-year change to departments, is the black line.
So the only thing this doesn't really account for, though, is the fact that in the first year, we're putting 13 million more than we need in, so that it seems like the starting point should be higher. I mean, we're prepaying 13 million plus, so really the starting dot should be higher if you're really being accurate with it, because it may not be what the state's making us pay, but we've paid up front. So, I mean, we don't get all that benefit.
That 13 million plus the 25% comes back to us in this blue line, the difference between the orange line and the blue.
I know, but the first dot's not right. The first dot ought to be
No,
13 million more.
it doesn't. It does not include the $13 million investment.
Yeah, but that's my point, is this shows what the state's gonna charge us each year for PERS, but it doesn't, but we're kickstarting this, we're putting 13 million and they're putting 4 million or whatever. So really that first dot should be higher, and then it goes down to the blue chart. You see what I'm saying? If you're really being accurate.
And the difference, there's two factors there. One is that the Senate Bill 1049, the UAL deferral, is not included in the black line, but it is included in the orange and blue line. So you can see there is a difference between those two.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just saying, it looks like by doing this, we're saving money all the way. Well, we're saving part of it because we've put in a big chunk this year.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. That's
I
exactly
think
right.
I'd modify the graph to show that.
So the blue wedge here, this is the accumulated savings, projected savings from the $13 million investment plus the 25%. So over the course of 16 years, you can see that turns into somewhere around $30 million in a return. And then the orange, and this is just an order of magnitude, the orange is the accumulated savings or deferred cost, one of the two, from Senate Bill 1049. So there was a lot going on in this graph. I thought it would be easier to step you through it to give you an explanation. But essentially this black line, I believe, gives us a stable plan to move forward with our PERS rates over the next 15 or 20 years. I like the fact that it's basically flat. We have a little bit of an increase here to deal with, but after that it more or less flattens out. In fact, in the budget proposal, when it gets to you, the net increase as a result of this from this year to next year is probably somewhere in the 1 to 1.5% increase in PERS costs to departments. So a very marginal increase.
So when you say that's a $30 million savings, does that include the 13 million we
It
spent
does.
to get it? So it's really a 43 plus 4 from the state, so It's really, the gross savings would be 47,000. The net savings is 47 million, the net savings is 30 million.
So,
See what I'm saying?
so the investment almost doubles itself. So if we have a $30 million accumulated savings over the course of 20 years, if you take away the 16 million, which is the 13 million plus the 25%, we're looking at about a $14 million return.
Oh, so it's only, the net's only 14.
Yeah. And this is amortized over a 16-year period. The reason that is because that's where the problem was, is we wanted to solve this hump of a problem and flatten the rates out as much as we could. All right, I hope that was useful. And if there's no questions about PERS, I'm going to roll on to budget to actuals report.
Sure.
Just give you a couple of highlights. So revenue in the general fund, and we could highlight any fund we wanted to, but we just do the general fund because it's the general fund. So our revenue year-to-date is 91% of our budget. And in terms of comparison, last year we were at 89%. So our revenue's a little bit higher compared to budget than last year. On the expense side, we're 56% of our budget has been spent, and that's a little bit ahead of 55%, which was last year. Year-over-year growth, revenue is 7.7% more than last year, and expenses are 7.3%.
The projected revenues are 7% greater.
Right now, they're 7.7% more than revenues were same time last year, and expenses are 7.3% more.
It's interesting, you're projecting, though, the net revenues will actually be, overall for the entire county, will actually be less than the fiscal year 19 actuals by a couple million, primarily because of health, but health benefits. You know what I'm saying?
Can you point me to what you're talking about here?
So the last number on the resources overview is 246,868. That's our projected revenues this year. Last year it was 248. If you look at actuals for 219,
All right, let me catch up.
He's on page
All
37.
right, gotcha.
I thought that's what we were talking about.
No, it was actually, there was a little budget to actually in this, page 35.
So the I'm with you now. So the 246.8 is 102% of budget. Is that the number?
Yeah, but I was comparing it to actuals of 2019. I was doing this second column.
Oh, copy that.
I was looking at which, like the general fund is up, projected right now to be a little over 2 million more than we had actuals in 19. Sheriff's office is more than $2 million, or it's about a little over $2 million more than we had actuals in 19. I was just looking at how do the actuals compare, the projected for this year versus the actuals, not where we are in the collection process, because I'm just looking at what the total actuals were.
Was there a question you want me to get back to you on?
No, I'm just kind of curious that it's lower because a lot of things are higher. TRT's up $1.5 million. So there's some that are down a lot, particularly health services.
Looks like the biggest drop is in that other category.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a big drop too, isn't it? So yeah, if you take out other, then all the others are net high.
The Fair and Expo is also down from 19 to 20,
By 100.
actual to projection.
Yeah. I just I look at that from kind of the big picture, where are we getting money and where are we not getting money, and others is hard to.
Why don't I look into a little bit of that and see if I can come up with the key drivers?
Right.
Let you know.
Actually, the other number is,
The other number?
yeah,
Okay.
it's quite significant.
Okay.
even though they say it's going to be 100%, if you compare it to
Budget.
actual of 19.
Budget,
Okay, I'll get back to you on that.
The others are kind of self-evident. I mean, there's more in the general fund, as we've gone through it before, for a couple reasons, so.
Okay. If you want to flip back to page 36 real quickly on position control, I'll just make a note that we have a vacancy, an unfilled rate of 5.6%. Last year at this time, it was 5.98%, so slightly in a lower position than last year.
One thing I didn't realize is that last column is for the entire fiscal year average. I was thinking it was,
Otherwise, it doesn't calculate.
no, I know, I was just
never
trying to
fi-
do the
I could never-
calculation. It's not where we are this month, it's where we've been through the year on those departments, right? So, to see where we are right now, we just have to read the last column, or the next to last column.
5.6, yep.
So it seems like the sheriff is still, it's at 16.75 unfilled positions, and health is at 17.05. So there's still, for our largest departments, there's still, significantly short a few employees.
Well, the one that I noticed that is major is 911 has 7 openings right now out of 53, so that's a 14% vacancy. Where these others are more like 3 or 4% vacancy, you know what I'm saying?
Right, no, 7 of over 53s. Yeah,
It's pretty
that's
significant.
significant. So,
And facilities is significant too, 5 out of 20. It's 25% vacancies. I'll bet that's hard to get those.
Any specific questions on position control?
no,
Nope.
I think that's,
Okay. All right, any questions on page 40, basically through the end of the report on the detail?
No, just a couple things to note. Boy, the priors were budgeted at 391, property taxes, prior property, and you're now projecting 950. That's a reflection of people catching up, I guess, as well as TJ.
Commissioner, what page are you on?
page 40.
Okay,
I thought that, yeah.
Right, that is significant that prior year's property taxes were double plus of the budget.
And the other one's the clerk.
actual.
And the clerk being up, 425,000. It was interesting because it was about 2 or 3 years ago that we were assuming it was going down and we're discussing it. and-
Last budget cycle,
Yeah,
and projecting this year.
so. My next question is on page 42.
okay.
Unless you have something before that.
Oh, I just noticed that we actually leased a second office to J Bar J on page 41. That was one of our footnotes. For, it's footnote B.
So does that mean, maybe, I don't know, if you know Greg, Tom, does that mean is it just the office or is another pod or what is that?
Yeah, they don't lease office space. I believe it's the second pod, but but the number's awful low. I'm honestly not sure. We'll have to chase down the specifics on that one. They've had a second pod for some time, so this, just based on a mere $8,000 difference, it could be they did lease a office somewhere in the building, but we'll find out for sure.
Okay.
So I had a question on TRT. It's our transit room tax. So is it a 1% TRT that goes to the fair that was passed by the voters to go to the fair?
70% of that, the most recent 1% increase was dedicated to the fair. But as you know, the Budget Committee has elected to also send that additional 30% the last couple of years, but 70% is what we are obligated to provide to the fair through the ballot title.
What that looks like, if you total those things down below, it's about $1 million or something. If the, in those three, down in transfers. And then remind me if the transfer to the sheriff and the transfer to COVA are formula-based, because I notice we're kind of building up our balance has gone from, our closing balance is projected to be 4.4 this year, and it was 2.2 in 19, the closing balance. So it's, or budgeted, or 2.5 was its
2.5.
actual. So it's growing, and I was wondering what we're going to do with that.
Well, that is subject to your decision each year during the budget cycle. We've been aware that that unallocated amount has been growing. You have choices on how you choose to spend that or save it. The amounts for the sheriff's office is discretionary each year by the Board of Commissioners with the input of the Budget Committee. The amounts that go to COVA are driven by a contract. There are certain percentages of each increment of TRT that comes in. So we are locked into that until we negotiate a different contract.
And what do you know what year we're on in the contract, or
It's about year 4.
out of 5?
It doesn't have an ending date. It renews each year. There is some notice periods that are built into the contract if we desire to change the allocation.
Yeah. So that'll be something we'll talk about at budget. I knew we'd talked about it before, but I just was noticing it, the growth.
Greg, I see that there is a footnote on the COVA actual that's, we've actually given them like almost 1.6 million. And I'm just wondering why that disbursement is at 76%.
See,
Yes.
Minus 27.
part of that's because we've collected more room tax than we've budgeted. That's primarily it.
Okay.
Year to
So we're
date,
just voluntarily giving more?
it's a percentage.
The contract actually doesn't specify a set amount. It's percentages, so as collections come in over budget, then the percentage that goes to COVA would automatically increase as well.
But you're saying they get 27.5% of the room tax actual number? Or is that, there need to be a breakdown to that?
Are you asking for clarification of that?
Right. Right, because if you actually calculate it, if you go to actual and you take the actual, it's a little different.
So their projected percentage collections compared to the original budget is about 27.5% more than what they were going to receive.
Okay. All right.
That makes
More.
sense? Yeah.
All right.
Mhm.
Due to greater room tax.
Yes. In fact, year-to-date, we're up 12.5%
Right.
room tax.
Okay.
Any other questions on the detail?
My next question is on page 49 on CDD. I was looking at our transfers out, and we did $1,379,000 last year. Looks like we're doing $1,462,000 this year. Do you know what the reserve fund is currently?
I don't. Do you?
Been doing it for several years.
Nick Lelak, Deschutes County Community Development Director. We have several reserve funds, and so the majority of the reserve fund is going into the building reserve fund, but we do have some going into the general reserve fund as well, CTD reserve fund.
Yeah, do you remember whether they accumulate or what they are individually, or?
I can provide the breakdown. I think overall, we're in the I know we're in the $5 to $6 million range for the total reserve funds for CDD, but, and I can ask Sherry Pinner, we can give you the numbers.
And we've gone
This
from
morning.
more or less 0 at the bottom of the recession to 5 or 6. Okay, that's all I was asking.
Yep.
For all of them.
Correct, for the balance for all.
And before the recession, weren't they at 8 or 9?
Not quite that high. They were maybe a little bit less than that, but they were.
We're almost back to
Yeah.
pre-recession. Okay.
Great. Thank you. I did have a question on page 47. Maybe you can let me know on footnote number H. So the mental health reserve transfer, like it was budgeted to be this $548,000, and we just won't know till end of the year where that's actually going to be.
I could take a guess at the reason why, but I don't know for sure.
Okay,
I'll get back to you on that.
thank you.
I think it's a balancing transfer.
Right.
Is that right, Tom? Okay.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it looks to me like it matches pretty close to last year's if we do the 548,601 to last year's actual. So aren't we just deciding, it's a decision point or something, whether we need to transfer the money in or not
So it's
from general
there's a
fund?
budget amount that was established, and at the end of the year, the fund is trued up, and as long as that amount needed to true it up is less than the budgeted amount, the transfer would be made to balance the fund.
Okay.
But I'm going to confirm that and get back to you. That's what I think is going on. Yeah.
On page 50, on motor vehicle revenue, I just thought it was fascinating that that is at 58% and year completed to date is 58.3%. Now, how did that turn out so close?
Wouldn't it be interesting if we had one more, if we had the decimal point moved one to the left?
Right. I know. I mean, anyway, noticing that was, I think, the only one in the packet that actually was like
Was right on.
and I'm going, road department, how does that?
Even their personnel services is 57%.
I know. Yes, but I do have, where are those? Oh, it's on page 53. I was noticing that some of the completed projects for the road department were actually over budget. The Six Corners was like 101,000 over. The budget for C Avenue was 300,000, and it was 369. And then the paving road, Ward Road, was over by like 117,000, I guess. So that just seemed to be a bit, it was, not that we're talking millions, but it's still, they were all a bit over for the completed projects, except for, well, the 500 allocated for, but that's an allocation, for the ward safety project.
So, and I'll check with the road department on this, but in prior life, we would initially budget these road improvement projects, and it would be, we were in a biennial budget, and it'd be 18 months until we would get started, so the numbers would be out of date. But what we always hunted towards was making sure we stayed within our overall budget, and we realizing that some were going to cost a little bit more and some would cost a little bit less, managing to that. But I'll check with Chris on that and
But
let you know.
those are the only three that are completed on this actual report that, and they're all over.
We're up $250,000.
Yes.
Commissioners, if just to kind of add to what Greg said, if you look at the prior year numbers for those particular projects, you see they were significantly underspent. So I think part of the guesswork on the part of road is to how much of a project is it going to be done in a certain fiscal year versus how much is going to get done in the following, on July forward, as opposed to June and earlier. So I think that part of it is just a timing issue, and you really have to look at the overall project cost over a couple, 3 years to see how they truly did in terms of their estimate versus actual.
Well, then I'd like to know, I can't remember exactly what Six Corners was costing, but if you're saying,
Looks like it cost $1.5 million, roughly.
yeah, I believe that's what it was.
It's the two actuals.
Yeah.
Six Corners, I'm trying to find it. South Canal, oh, I see, okay.
It was a correction from Crook County from the six-way intersection from 1916?
So you'd like to know what
Well-
those were originally budgeted at versus
Right.
what they're coming at? Okay.
Well, yes, it looks like budget, it was really at 8, it was like at 1.7, if you look at this. So then if you're saying it's 1.7, it actually came in under budget.
Okay. It's on the list.
It was nice to see that the solid waste was holding firm and at 60% of their franchise, right there in the neighborhood, the entire revenue was at 61%. So that always
Well-
makes me feel good.
Yeah, but it also, Tim hasn't done his estimates yet. He's one of the few that hasn't really projected.
Nobody meant its actual number.
Oh, I know, but I'm just saying that could lead to better projections. We used to, in 17, the departments are really a lot better than they used to be in terms of projecting when I started. And so I'm just pointing out, he's one that hasn't projected. Most of them are really projecting a lot these days compared to what we used to do, so that's good.
Okay.
That's part of our monthly process, is to reach out to departments and ask
Yeah,
for
that's
any
good.
changes. And
Well, Wayne started it, and it's, I noticed with the RV park and the fair that they're estimating more revenues this year. I guess it's because our actuals are up. Is that what have you had any feedback on that?
on the $60,000 number,
Yeah, well, and specifically the 58,000
58?
top, but yeah. That's good. I mean, it's just good. Is that your understanding, Tom, that because we went to the less than 30-day fees a couple of years ago, and
Well, I know they're going gangbusters, though it's been a mild winter, so I'm sure they're doing better over the winter months as well. But it's rare that you don't see that facility with a lot of RVs in it.
so the winter months are, if they're mild, they're better for us?
Yeah.
That makes
Otherwise,
sense.
people go head south.
further south.
That's good. So I have a couple questions on risk management and health. On risk management, which is on page 57, there's a big number for claims reimbursement. The actual in 19 was 57,000. Now, this month, we think it's 450,000. Who are we getting reimbursed from?
That was the reimbursement for the Fair and Expo roof, the completion of that project.
Oh, insurance is paying those bills.
Yeah, we pay them up front, and then we get reimbursed from the property insurance company.
And we just hadn't anticipated that last budget season,
Well, we thought it was going to come,
the year before.
yeah.
Do you know how much those roofs ended up being? I remember when when it first came up with us in 17, we talked about it, but
They were about 500,000 or 550.
And And then on general liability, I noticed that now there's a reduction in your estimate of what, about $500,000 reduction on what you project the claims to, general liability claims to be. I noticed the note says it's trending down, but does that factor in any of the suits we currently have, or?
They do, but general liability is very hard to project when and how much there'll be a payout.
Yeah.
If you look over the years on general liability, there are years that we pay out a couple $100,000, and then there are other years that it's in excess of $1 million. So I tend to budget that high, and then as the fiscal year continues, or adjust it accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, even last year you budgeted 900 and it was only 633.
And the other thing about general liability and workers' comp, those are the largest claims payout, is luckily they kind of flip-flop. One year will be, workers' comp will be anywhere from 500,000 all the way up to, a high of 1.2 million. And then some years workers' comp is high and general liability is low, then the next year it flips.
I see.
So you're still leaving the workman's compensation up at the 1.2 projection, 1.2 million?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we actually paid out a little over $1 million in 19, so that makes sense.
Then I had a question on health benefits. I'd asked last month about the premiums, and so I looked at it again this month about the CYC premiums. So we had budgeted 1967, and it's projected 16. Well, that's a 18% reduction. So the 5% reduction in whatever it's called, the charge doesn't explain all that. What's the rest of that from? I mean, or 5% reduction of rates isn't going to give you a $300,000, or it was $350,000, almost $347,000 reduction.
Yeah, I understand your question. I don't have an answer,
Yeah.
but I'll get one.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying.
I'm just curious if we could get
Yeah.
research on that, if it was just the rates or what.
Well, if you look back at the actuals, 1.79 million last year. Other than the only two factors that would affect this would be a rate change, which there was a 5% reduction, but then it's flat this
It's
year.
still a 10% reduction.
Right. So the only other factor is the number of staff, and they wouldn't.
FTEs or filled positions,
Yeah.
or the
So-
number of.
So I guess that's what I'm kind of
Yeah.
asking. Is
Yep.
Are we serving less people
Yep.
over there, or did they do something else besides the 5% reduction?
I know they've been hiring a lot of people
Yeah.
lately.
Yeah. I'll get an answer for you on that one.
I'm sure I have no
Any
other
other question on the financials?
for me.
Okay.
Do you have any?
So just two more things I want to bring up real quick is we have our investment advisory committee meeting next week. That's on Tuesday. And I just want to let you know I'm really pleased with the members on our committee. They're engaged, they're smart, they understand the investment community. So I think they're a big help to the work that we're doing to efficiently and in a way to maximize our return in our portfolio. So that's next week, and I'll give you a briefing on that afterwards.
Do you meet with them quarterly, Greg?
Semi-annually. And then also on Tuesday is our department budget kickoff. So that'll be, we started the year with our internal service funds, developing their budgets, and then we roll that into budgeting efforts with all of our departments. So that'll be on Tuesday as well.
That sounds like a party, doesn't it?
It does.
Budget kickoff.
Yeah, kickoff.
Yes.
And then I want to introduce Ariel Samuel here in a second, but I want to go back and touch on business intelligence, the dashboarding, the drill down that we talked about. There's about 4 reasons why this is important, and I'm going to show you one today that we haven't shown you before. But One of those reasons is, as we've talked about before, is just simply monitoring. Is there a way to take all of this information and boil it down into a few graphics that work for most people in terms of monitoring budgets, monitoring, you know, a lot of the questions that you're answering or asking. Another one is transparency. How do we make this information more digestible to folks who aren't inside the county? And then also in your seats, in terms of decision making, how can we make this information more useful for you in terms of making decisions for the county? And then the other one, which we haven't talked about yet, which we're going to talk about today, is process improvement. How do we take data on fiscal data and our operating data and look at that and say, you know, we'd like to make some changes. We'd like to shorten a process. We'd like to make it less expensive. How do we monitor that and use this data to make some process changes to actually improve the things that we do every day in our departments? So with that, the star of the show, I'm going to turn this over, unless there's any other questions for me. Okay.
Thank you.
And that doesn't work, just tap there.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Ariel Samuel. I'm from Health Services. I'm the supervisor for billing, credentialing, fiscal services, and contract services. So as our administrative services division has made some structural changes recently to the supervision of a few of our teams to better balance workloads, we also needed to figure out how to manage the increasing and evolving financial needs of our departments, including a perceived lack of fiscal team staffing. We wanted to do that by using existing tools and technology. It's worth noting that in fiscal year 2010, we had the adopted budget staffing for health services was 130.6 FTE. For 2019, it's 255.15 FTE, so that's a 95% increase. During that time, fiscal staffing has remained the same at 2.0 FTE. So some of the opportunities that I identified, I just very recently was asked to supervise the fiscal services team. So some areas that I identified or were identified to me as having some room for growth and change. We were processing our accounts payable or AP invoices in mid-December that were dated early to mid-October. Obviously, that's problematic, an 8-week or more lag for a number of reasons. As a supervisor of a new to me area, I had no benchmark data or resources to tell me who on my team was doing what and how that output compared to other departments in the county. So I really needed to establish a baseline in order to even begin to consider, were we truly understaffed or was there something we needed to change in our processes to make things more efficient? There was no identifiable way to split up the workload because all of the AP invoices were kind of going into this bucket, which you'll see. Because everyone was working in that bucket at once, things were getting double worked, just too many cooks in the kitchen. The bucket of AP invoices made it really difficult to implement any kind of prioritization or assignment of work. Just again, it was one big catch-all. The big thing that needed a lot of attention was our process for reconciling and receiving our daily cash. It was very lengthy, very time consuming and confusing due to some recent, in the last few years, changes we've made in health services in terms of collecting co-pays. I've also moved the billing team over to receiving electronic fund transfer checks from insurance companies rather than paper checks, so it makes things much quicker. But our daily cash receipting didn't keep up with that. So we were literally spending $1 to try and track down and report on a dime. And then finally, I call it squirrel syndrome. I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Up, but the dog's like squirrel and runs off in the other direction. There was a lot of that happening on the fiscal team because they didn't have any metrics or benchmarks. It was like, oh, this email came up, I'm going to do that. The phone call came up, I'm going to do that. And the daily tasks kept getting pushed further and further down. So some of the solutions we came up with, I worked really closely with Cam Sparks and James Wood. I also worked really closely with our health services data analytics team. We were able to combine some reporting and data from Munis and Outlook, actually, and translate it into some Power BI dashboards that allowed me to monitor my employees' productivity, compare it to others in the organization, and start setting some goals and benchmarks. The daily cash receipting automation took data from Epic, our electronic health system, and Munis, and then combined and translated it into their respective languages, which allowed us to virtually eliminate human interpretation and manual input of this data. So the first dashboard that was created was our accounts payable dashboard. The various funds and the AP clerks are over here on the left. The date span, and this, you can change this, is up here at the top. The upper right box shows the clerk and the average number of accounts payable invoices they are doing per day. And then the information in the middle is just allowing you to see, you can pick what clerks you want to look at, how many invoices they're doing, and then overall for that fund, who's entering what and how many we've entered and processed in that time frame. So that was really helpful for me because it allowed me to monitor in real time what my staff were doing. It allowed me to start setting some benchmarks for them. And then when they weren't meeting those daily productivity goals, I could immediately intervene and say, what are the barriers here? The second dashboard that was created helped with how to prioritize and restructure our AP folders. So originally I talked to you about the big bucket. So over on the left, they were all just going into inbox. That's about it. So with James's help, we created some new folders and ways of categorizing the different accounts payable invoices that come in. We have WIP, which are work in progress folders. So when things need to be worked, they're in there, and then they get moved over to processed. So by creating this new inbox structure, we were, I say we, it really was Cam and James's baby. We're able to create this dashboard that allows me to quickly go in and see what's in the inboxes, how many things need to be worked, what's the oldest date of the accounts payable invoice that's in there. It also allowed me to be able to see, it allowed me to be able to assign different WIP, work in progress boxes to different employees rather than just get in the big catch-all and try and do some work. So along with that dashboard, this dashboard is part of that. So restructuring those inboxes allowed us to drill down even further to see what's been read, what's been not read, how long it's taking invoices to get processed once they get moved into the work in progress folders. Down here in the lower left, I can quickly see of the different types of AP invoices we have, what's the highest volume. Vendors is quite large. So there again, I'm able to take some data and assign work and redistribute priorities based on that. This is all information we didn't have before. So the daily cash receipting automation, this screenshot really doesn't do justice to the tremendous amount of process improvement and data intelligence that's built into this workbook. This new workbook combined 3 separate reports that we were using before, automated all of the project string coding, and allowed us to do one quick journal upload to Munis. Previously, pretty much everything that you see on this screen was being manually researched and keyed in by 1 or 2 individuals, and if you'll remember, I only have 2 FTE. Sometimes taking as long as 6 hours a day to research and code all of this. Daily cash receipting, because of this improvement in automation, went from 4 to 6 hours a day on average to 15 minutes. So these are just some simple graphics to visually show you what these tools and resources have meant to our department. Our AP turnaround time improved by 300%, going from 8 or more weeks down to 2. Again, like I said, the hours spent on daily cash have decreased by 94% from 4 hours a day, that's a very low average, to 15 minutes or less. So by spending less time receiving our daily cash, we've freed up resources to tackle other things in the department. So I just want to say I've worked for the county for 7.5 years, and I've seen a really dramatic shift in the last several years towards efficiency and innovation. So I always ask my staff, if you've worked here and you've been pressing a button the whole time you've worked here, instead of just pressing the button, ask yourself, why are you pressing it? Does it still need to be pressed? Is there a better way to press it? Can we combine buttons? It's really shifted the way we look at our work. And I tell them, don't worry about whether the outcome is possible. Just tell me what the outcome is that you want, and I'll see if I can make it happen. So this was this. I went to James and Cam and said, this is what I need. This is what I want. How can you help me? Can you help me? So I'm very grateful to Health Services and specifically our finance department for helping us implement all of this. It's obviously made a tremendous difference in our work. Any questions?
Fascinating. So Ariel, we have 120 more employees than in 2010, is that what?
Yes. But the same amount of fiscal staff.
Right.
Yes.
2.
Yes, two.
Yes.
2.
So those 2 people now are doing a very well-organized operation.
We're working on it, yes. I took over supervision December 1st, and they've been really on board with my style of supervision of, let's see if we still need to press the button. So yes, we are definitely moving in a much more efficient and streamlined way of life.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your presentation.
No, thank you. Cynthia?
Good morning, Commissioners. Cynthia Smith with the County Planning Division. Before you is a consideration of second reading of a ordinance 2020-002 for a Redmond urban growth boundary land exchange with the county. We are looking at approving a comprehensive plan amendment and a zone change with this. The first reading was conducted on the 12th, February 12th. And so we're here for the second reading. I just want to point out I made 2 minor changes to the ordinance. It's basically in the header for Exhibit B and Exhibit C. It was more aesthetics. I noticed that the exhibit was not showing up on every page as intended, so I just filled it in just so we all look good adopting this ordinance. Otherwise, nothing else has changed, and legal has reviewed this ordinance. Adam Smith, legal counsel, has reviewed this ordinance in the past.
Okay,
So that's
great.
So I would move approval. Do I need to move approval of this?
The first motion would be to move second reading by title only, and then after that's completed, you would move adoption.
I'll move for second reading of ordinance number 2020-002, Redmond UGB amendment,
And
by title only.
I will second that motion. Commissioner Henderson?
I vote yes.
And the chair votes yes. So by title only, I will read that an ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title 23, the Deschutes County Comprehensive Plan to adjust the Redmond urban growth boundary and comprehensive plan designations for certain properties, and Title 19, the Deschutes County zoning map to adjust zoning for certain properties. Ordinance number 2020-002. So now we need to adopt it?
Yeah, the motion now would be to adopt ordinance 2020-002.
So I'd move approval of ordinance, or adoption of ordinance 2020-002.
And I'll second that motion. Commissioner Henderson?
I vote yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you.
So,
thank you, and this will become effective on May 26th in 90 days.
May 26, 90 days. Thank you.
Thank
We've
you.
been working on this for
How many-
3.5 years,
Yeah.
as long as I've been here.
Yeah.
Yeah, good, thanks.
Thank you so much. All right, so Matthew?
Good morning, Commissioners. Matthew Martin, Deschutes County Planning Division. As noted on the agenda, and very similar to what Cynthia just presented to you, This is consideration of second reading and adoption of ordinance 2020-003. This is a comprehensive plan amendment with goal exception to allow sewer outside of an urban growth boundary on rural lands to serve exclusively the City of Bend Outback Water Facility. First reading of the ordinance was conducted by the board on February 12th, approved unanimously, so back for second reading and adoption consideration.
Okay.
And I'll note no changes to the ordinance that was presented to you on first reading, and it has been reviewed by legal counsel.
Thank you.
So I would move second reading of ordinance number 2020-003, City of Bend Plan Amendment for Sewer to Outback Facility by title only.
And I will second that motion. Commissioner Henderson?
Vote yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. So, an ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title 23, the Deschutes County Comprehensive Plan to add an exception to statewide planning goal 11, public facilities and services, to allow sewer on rural lands to serve the City of Bend Outback Water Facility. Ordinance number 2020-003.
And then I would move adoption of ordinance 2020-003, City of Bend Plan Amendment for Sewer to Outback Facility.
And I would second that motion. Any further? Commissioner Henderson?
I vote yes.
And the chair votes yes. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. And just a
Matthew.
note of effective date is 90 days from today, which is 26.
Doesn't it have to go to the state for? Yeah.
So next steps is staff will coordinate a submittal to Department of Land Conservation and Development for their consideration and acceptance of the change to the plan amendment, or change to the comprehensive plan.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I believe we're going to recess. Is there any further business we should do this morning before we do?
Found it in my pocket.
What?
I found this. I've been missing it. It was in my pocket.
Oh, good. Well, how exciting is that?
Well, it's exciting for me because
No, I left this here. I couldn't figure out what happened to my $15 calculator, so.
yeah, I know.
have
If I
something?
hadn't worn this jacket.
Well, it's up to the board. As you know, we have 2 and additional executive sessions that we didn't have time to do on Monday, so we could either retire upstairs and do those now. You could take a break for lunch and reconvene after lunch, whatever your pleasure is. We've also have got just a couple of quick other items as well.
Okay.
So I've actually I'm on the Public Health Advisory Committee, and they meet at noon, so I think it's recess for now and then get over to that meeting.
Yes.
So
We were
come
going
back
to
at,
recess until 2, so he can get back from that meeting.
okay.
So thank you very much. We will therefore recess till 2. Upstairs, yes.